Hi there. My name is Deanna Hansen. I'm the founder of Fluid Isometrics and Block Therapy, and we have just completed our third season of our podcasts. And we've got so many questions that we're going to start answering them on a fairly regular basis. So let's dive in and answer your questions right now. I had a question from Mary asking if fascia and adhesions are the same, and also asked about abdominal surgeries that she had and pain as a result. So first of all, I just want to clarify. Fascia is the connective tissue holding every single one of our trillions of cells together. And it's a combination of both primarily elastin and collagen that make up this tissue. So what happens with adhesion as we start falling out of alignment, the collagen component of the fascia starts to migrate to areas of need. So for example, if I'm sitting correctly in alignment, all of my cells are supported properly. There's optimal space between and around each cell. But as I start falling from balance, whether standing, seated, or just doing general activity in life, if this becomes my habit, the collagen starts to migrate to stop me from tipping over and landing on my face. The adhesions are really the accumulation of the migration of the collagen, which then hold us out of alignment with that 2,000 pounds per square inch seal. Similar to scar tissue is also made up of collagen. So adhesions and collagen are the same thing, and they really act the same in the fascia system where they block flow. Whether we're talking fluids, oxygen, energy, these adhesions and the scar tissue block that flow to and from cells. And this is really what creates the issues, whether we're talking about pain, bloating, stagnancy in the body as a result of that built-up inflammation. So understanding the difference between fascia and what adhesions are, it is a component of the fascia, but it's really the imbalance of what happens as we fall from correct alignment. Helen asked the question, how do you release a spasm in the left palm when she doesn't understand where the cause could have come from? And that's just it. When we're talking about the fascia system, there are cause sites to the issue sites. But when we're dealing with the left hand, typically what's going to be happening is the right side of the rib cage is likely going to be collapsing, because what this does is the collapse of the rib cage creates an internal rotation of the arm. And then that blocks blood and oxygen flow to the hand. So when we work on the area of concern, we aren't really getting to the root of the issue. Now there's multiple cause sites in the whole body, because what's ultimately causing the rib cage to collapse, then we need to look down at the foundation, the feet, and see what's causing that pulling away. But the reality is that's why block therapy is a full body process, because there are cause sites all throughout the body that are really causing specific areas of pain to be under tension, not receiving that proper flow in the body, which creates pain, aging, and disease in the body. Marcy and John asked a question which I find really interesting and intriguing. How do we really navigate this process that I'm teaching when this world is so full of stress all the time? If I'm understanding the question correctly, my response would be that that's the issue. The world is so much under stress and we're so toxic, and all of this is really impacting our proper diaphragmatic breath. It's causing us to breathe through the muscles of the upper chest, but that's the fallout method of breathing. We are born to breathe diaphragmatically, and when we dive into this process and we really make the full exhalation the focus of the breath, we turn on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is required for healing. So understanding that the breath is really the key, and when we're talking about fascia, if we don't have proper alignment for the cells, then the breath becomes compromised. So this is a lifestyle. It isn't something that you just turn on in that very moment. It's something that needs to become a bit of a discipline, but it's the body's most natural thing to do, is breathing diaphragmatically. So when you begin to start tapping into this process, you start to see the benefits, and it's a continual journey from there. Helene asked if I could dive in a little bit further into the magnetics and talk more about the electromagnetic being that we are, and also how the PMF machines as well as the TENS machines really impact the body. And the reality is that the pressure fibers are larger in the body than the pain fibers. So as an example, the understanding of the TENS machine, it's to stimulate those pressure fibers to override the pain fibers. Now, this is also something that we teach in block therapy. Pressure over time creates heat, it creates blood flow, but it also connects you to that diaphragmatic breath, which changes your entire frequency in your body. It changes the brain frequency, it connects you to the vagus nerve, to your parasympathetic nervous system. So the thing is, when we're stressed and we fall out of alignment, we start breathing through the muscles of the upper chest. And this causes the cells in the body to start to deflate because they're not properly fed oxygen fully and completely. So as we start deflating and we start becoming compressed, cells become closer together and they magnetically seal. So using other devices is a wonderful way of activating the pressure fibers, but the reality is that magnetic seal that will stick to bone with a force of up to 2,000 pounds per square inch, that won't be released from something like a TENS machine. We need to literally get into the tissue and shear those layers apart so that we can promote that blood and oxygen flow into that newly created space. The combination of those machines plus this work is extremely powerful. So I hope that made sense and answered your question. Dora asked, is cupping good for scar tissue? Cupping is a great modality, but the challenge with scar tissue is that because it's literally made of collagen and there's no space in this tissue, it's extremely dense. So cupping will support blood and oxygen flow to the surrounding tissue, but not likely is it actually going to start to penetrate and infiltrate that scar tissue. The collagen becomes magnetically entangled. So in order to release the scar tissue, we need to shear through the layers of fascia. So the process that we teach with fascia decompression is how to do that. So cupping in combination with this would be a wonderful modality and very complementary, but cupping on its own will stimulate blood and oxygen to flow to cells that already have some space, but to be able to really rectify scar tissue and create change, you need something a little more intense and deep so that we can actually get to the bone. Nancy asked, and I have to say I get this question a lot, what is the ideal sleep position for correct alignment? And that can be a little challenging because you can have an intention of going to sleep on your back, but then we move when we're sleeping. So if you are sleeping on your back, I actually don't sleep with a pillow now because the goal is that we have our head in neutral. If you're sleeping with a pillow and you compare that to standing or sitting, that would be like having your head forward. And then that's going to block the carotid arteries so that you won't have proper blood and oxygen flow to your brain. It's going to impact your thyroid, your major lymphatic drainage sites. So sleeping on your back with no pillow would be my recommendation. But having said that, if you've been sleeping with a really thick pillow, you want to take your time and grade down. You don't just want to go from 0 to 100 because our body needs time to adapt. Now, if you're sleeping on your side, this can get a little trickier because often what people will do is they'll go into that fetal position. So as soon as we lie on the side and we have our shoulder congesting this area, now that's impacting blood flow to the arm as well as up to the brain. So the way I sleep on my side is I actually lie on my side, I put my opposite leg out, and then I bring my shoulder back behind me, and I will place my hand on my ribs or even behind me if that's comfortable. I will also tuck my chin, align the tongue as we teach people to do, pull my head back, so I'm almost in a little bit of a back bend before I fully relax. And then my body will recoil to some degree, but if I continue to do this as a practice, eventually the body stays in that position. So understanding that whenever we're changing our habits, especially when it comes to sleeping, this is a bit of a journey, but give that a try, and I would love to hear back if you have any positive feedback or negative, either way. Diane asked the question, what is cellular alignment? So we did a whole podcast really discussing the difference between posture and cellular alignment. So when we're referencing posture, it's typically how a person sits or stands during the day or how they're even walking. Now, cellular alignment, we're going a little bit more deeply and we're getting more specific. Every single cell in the body has a rightful position. And if every cell is exactly where it's supposed to be, there's optimal space in and around every single cell. As long as there's optimal space, there's optimal flow. A body with optimal flow has no pain, no stress, no dis-ease happening in the body. Now, that's not our reality. We live in a world where we are dominant on one side, we are afflicted with gravity, stress all the time. So the body over time adapts to this stress through breathing through the muscles of the upper chest. The challenge is, though, when we're not breathing properly and fully diaphragmatically, we start minimizing the amount of oxygen absorption into the cells. So they start to deflate. And as they start to deflate and we overuse one side of the body, we start to draw the cells away from their rightful position. They start to migrate. So the goal of fascia decompression is to take your body and your cells in that opposite direction, pulling the cells back to where they're supposed to be positioned. So for example, if I'm sitting like this all the time, I literally have had my cells migrate away, and because of adhesion developing to support that correct alignment, they become blocked from flow. So to be able to release those adhesions, breathe life into that space, and understand how to bring your body back to correct alignment, and then use your body properly all the time, helps to support those cells into correct alignment so that we do have optimal flow and then therefore optimal health. Regina commented on one of our podcasts that emotional pain and trauma can create illness. And I just wanted to add a little bit more to that because I completely agree. Whether your trauma is physical, emotional, mental, or even spiritual, what happens when we are under some kind of attack is we go into protective mode. We hold the breath. This is important for us for survival, but if this becomes something that becomes chronic in our body, and let's say it is an emotional trauma, then what happens is as we start holding the breath, we start minimizing the amount of oxygen absorption, and then cells start to struggle because the first and foremost nutrient cells require to thrive is oxygen. So as soon as we get into that fear response, if we don't release it like a deer who survives an attack, you'll see them shaking if they survive that attack. We tend to go into that lock mode, and then we end up breathing from a very compressed way going forward from that point. And that compression of the diaphragm and then the resulting shift in your overall alignment is going to create problems down the road that are going to continue to build as gravity will be impacting this very dense, heavy body that doesn't have proper oxygen. Nancy asked, is it normal to be tired after blocking, especially in the beginning? And absolutely. So what's happening when we start doing this process of fascia decompression and we start waking up areas of the body that have been previously blocked from adhesion and scar tissue is now you have cells that are really hungry, but your body has to produce more blood to send all of that information to those cells. So as your body is going through this rebuilding phase, we basically heal when we sleep. So if you happen to be tired when you start this process, that's totally normal, but it's an amazing sign that your body is becoming stronger. And it is when you're sleeping that all of this wonderful magic is happening. So if you have the opportunity, you want to sleep as much as you can if your body's calling you to do it, because that's when you ultimately start to transform. Carolyn asked about a C-section scar from 4 years ago. So we have so many people in our community that are using block therapy to address their C-sections. And what is so exciting is I'm hearing from the members that as soon as they start getting into this work, they can start to feel that integration. So when we have a scar, we essentially lose that muscular connection, and then we have collapsing occurring, and then the lower belly, if that's where the scar is, can start to bulge. And that becomes really frustrating because you may not have changed anything from the perspective of diet and exercise, yet your body is changing now because of the scar. So as you start to dive into this process and you start to learn how to shear that scar apart from each other, you start to get that blood and oxygen into that tissue, and then it regenerates. And it's a lovely process because now you start to feel your body becoming connected again to itself. So if you want to see more, you can go to our private Facebook community, Block Therapy Community. You can ask that question, and you're going to have people that have actually gone through that experience respond as well. A user had asked if we use our process and techniques with anybody with autoimmune disease, such as MS or anything else for that matter, and absolutely we do. And whenever I'm assessing people with any of these conditions, the most important thing is to look at the body as a whole, because we want to understand the patterning of the fascia and how to release the anchors or the grips that are holding that body out of alignment. And what I see typically in people with autoimmune disease is they are very, very frozen in through here, and their calves and their feet are extremely dense and pulled out of alignment. When the calves and the feet are pulled out of alignment, these are the anchors to everything up the body. So no matter what other techniques you are doing to attempt to rectify whatever disease you have, if we don't release those anchors, we're not going to be making any gains. And that's why when it comes to fascia, looking at the full body is so crucial, because without releasing the patterning of the feet, we'll never be able to get back to that proper diaphragmatic breath. And that's always going to be the foundational reason that people are struggling. If your diaphragm isn't working properly, it affects every aspect of your health, including your nervous system, how your brain communicates with all of the cells, how your gut and your brain communicate. So learning fascia decompression, but most importantly, understanding that there's cause sites to issues that are so impactful. This is really the key to undoing what time has done and rebuilding your body from the ground up. Constance asked the question, does fascia have anything to do with circulation? And absolutely, it has everything to do with circulation, because it's the adhesions in the scar tissue that ultimately are blocking blood and oxygen flow to cells. Understanding, though, the components of block therapy, there's 3 pillars: creating space in the body, inflating space, and maintaining that space. So what happens to our body over time is we start falling out of alignment. As we start falling out of alignment, the collagen component of the fascia migrates to stop us from tipping over. The collagen is like the structural part of the body. The elastin, which is the other component of the fascia, allows us to move. So we want a balance of the 2 proteins in order to, A, not be a puddle, but also not be a concrete block. So when collagen starts to migrate away to create these building blocks for our structure, we call them false walls and false floors. They really become barricades to blood and oxygen flow. And the calves and the feet are going to be the most strongly held out of alignment because they're the furthest from the engine being the diaphragm. So if we're breathing through the muscles of the upper chest, our body isn't very efficient. Think of a boat. If you're a fisherman, there's an inboard motor and a trolling motor. The inboard motor is like the diaphragm. It's strong. It can move fast and it can go for a long time. There's a lot of power to it. The muscles of the upper chest are more like a trolling motor. Trolling for fish is a very different purpose than driving the boat a great distance at a great speed. So you really want to tap into the powerhouse of your body, which is the diaphragm. But in order to do that, we also have to unlock the patterning of the whole body so that we can access this beautiful muscle fully and completely. And when you do, you heat your body. We have optimal tissue temperature, which allows for optimal flow. If you're having issues with your circulation, you likely feel parts of your body are cooler. And that really means there's adhesions riddled throughout and there's not that energy in that area. So this will absolutely be wonderful for you to address that. Cindy asked if her scoliosis could be related to a childhood trauma, and absolutely it can. What happens whenever we have trauma, whether physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual, is we reactively hold the breath. If we don't release that holding pattern, we start aging from that alignment going forward. So if I'm protecting my body and I collapse in a way to the right, that's going to change my gait. And then as my gait continues to change, that's going to create a very different form and function in my body. Function and form are tied together. When I have optimal function, it's because I have a body that's properly aligned. However, when my body starts falling out of alignment, the form changes, but so does the function. So we start getting pulled into this negative patterning. And when you're looking at scoliosis, it's really the limbs, your calves and your feet and your forearms and the hands that are most impacting what's going on in through here. The limbs are like the puppet masters for the core. So we have to look at what's going on in their patterning, release that old pattern, and rebuild the body from a correct foundation up the chain. And then that's going to help to realign what's going on in the core of the body as we start to also improve proper diaphragmatic breathing. So absolutely it could be a result of that childhood trauma, but it might have even been from the womb. There's so many things that we don't really understand where things start from, but even how your mother was developing, if she was twisted in any way, you might have had an impact from that as well. So it's quite a fascinating topic when we start to really dive into fascia, but most importantly, we can reverse these issues through the process of fascia decompression. Jane asked, how do you get rid of scar tissue from a sprained ankle? And great question. The reality is, though, scar tissue and adhesions really being the same thing, it's all about understanding how to shear through the tissue so that we can open that scar tissue up and pump blood and oxygen flow into the body. One really good thing when we're dealing with issues with the feet is to work between each one of the toes, because it's the patterning now that got created as a result of your injury that is now holding your body in that locked position. And that patterning is really going to be held and cemented by the alignment of your toes. So when we spend 3 minutes working between each toe, just like this with a finger or a pencil, you start to change the patterning of how your gait is. And then what you want to do after that is you want to bring your feet together and you want to grip the toes into the floor to reestablish proper alignment of the feet. Now, that's one simple thing that you can do on a daily basis. We've got classes in our membership, though, that dive into the feet in so many different ways, because really there's adhesions everywhere. And once you sprain your ankle, if this happened years ago, your entire gait has been impacted by this, and then there's going to be adhesions throughout all of the bones in the feet as well. So learning to decompress your body in general is important for this process, and also establishing proper diaphragmatic breathing. But the big key is we don't want to be rubbing. So if you sprained your ankle on that lateral portion or that outer portion of your ankle, one thing you can simply do is take your third and fourth finger and go right to where that scar tissue is and just put pressure in for 3 minutes. Again, we can do it with a block, but you can also do it with your fingers. And if you hold as you breathe, you're going to start to feel more mobility coming in, and then you can really make some huge gains in changing that scar tissue. But to learn more, you can certainly even just get our sampler program, which teaches you how to use a rolled up towel. Someone asked if with block therapy you could heal an inguinal hernia, and I just want to say absolutely, you can heal anything in the body through understanding this process. The issue with an inguinal hernia is that when we're standing incorrectly and we're moving that hip joint to the front of the socket, we're putting immense pressure right on that inguinal ligament. And if that becomes our posture all the time, the tissue becomes weak. It starts to break, essentially, kind of like leaky gut, right? Like think of, if you overblow up a balloon and how it becomes weak at the seams. So same thing with any area of the body. If it's under stress all the time, it starts to weaken and fray. So with the hernia, then you've got the inner components coming out. So the key is we have to address the body as a whole, because it's not only just working in the area where we have the issue, it's about understanding what are the forces causing that issue to be there. And with that inguinal hernia, it's going to largely be coming from how you stand. So when you're standing with correct alignment, we have both feet underneath the hip joints, feet pointing forward, knees slightly bent. And when we do that, we're supporting everything up the chain. But as soon as we start shifting our weight one side to the other and we start hyperextending the knees, then we end up playing with the joints in the pelvis, and that impacts what's going on with the soft tissue. So yes, this can heal, but it is a journey. It's a journey of releasing the old patterning, pumping blood and oxygen flow into those cells to create that healing opportunity, and then owning that new alignment, which is really the key. Understanding how to own your proper alignment and changing the habits that caused the issues in the first place. So that completes our first round of Q&A from the podcast, and I just want to share how incredibly grateful I am that you take the time to listen as well as ask questions and make comments. That really helps us navigate how to move forward, because whatever your questions are, that becomes the future podcast that we'll have. So please keep doing what you're doing. Put in the comments below if this has been helpful in any way, shape, or form. And if you haven't been to our website, blocktherapy.com, it's filled with tons of information. And most importantly, even if you just want to give this a little sample, we have a program. It's $9 for 9 videos teaching you how to use a rolled up towel, which is so important just as a feel for what this work is all about. So if you're uncertain about block therapy, you can start there. Even go to our YouTube channel, and we've got tons of free videos on that as well. So we'd love to see you there, and please continue to share what you want. And thank you so much.